Undercover boss ordered dinner in his own restaurant, could not believe the waitress complaining about tips. An older man walks into a restaurant alone, wears a worn-out hoodie, orders a simple dinner. But as he takes a quiet sip of his coffee, the waitress rolls her eyes, walks to the back, and starts mocking him, loudly, calling him cheap, useless, and not worth the table space. What she doesn't know is, he built this restaurant chain from scratch with his bare hands, and tonight he's here for answers. 30 years ago, Javier Morales, a 32-year-old immigrant from Honduras with calloused hands, a thick accent, and nothing but grit, opened a tiny roadside diner in Baton Rouge. He had one fryer, a secondhand griddle, and his mother's gumbo recipe scrawled on a grease-stained notecard. He called it Cajun Soul because that's what he believed food was meant to feed. Not just the body, but the soul. And he made a silent vow to his mother, Maria, who had passed just a year before. No one will ever be made to feel small here. Not the janitor, not the customer who counts coins to pay, not the waitress on her worst day. Everyone leaves here full, with food and with dignity. That vow became the foundation of a Southern success story. From a 10-seat diner, Cajun Soul grew into a chain of 140 beloved restaurants across the South, known for overflowing plates, $5 meatloaf specials, and servers who called every guest on and meant it. But something changed. Recently, Javier started receiving anonymous letters. Not one, dozens. A dishwasher who said he was being screamed at in Spanish by the night manager. A mother who claimed her server mocked her behind her back for leaving a cheap tip. A loyal customer who swore the food didn't feel made with love anymore. Each letter cut deeper than the last. Cajun Soul wasn't just a company to Javier. It was the legacy of his mother and the American dream he bled for. So he didn't send a memo. He didn't fire people over email. He did what no one expected. He dressed down, way down, a faded hoodie, gray sweatpants, old sneakers with a sole peeling off. He even left his Rolex behind and traded it for a $15 Casio. Then one rainy Thursday night, he walked into Maria's place, the busiest Cajun Soul location in Atlanta, named after the very woman whose picture hung on every wall. No one knew who he was. Not the hostess who barely glanced at him, not the waitress who rolled her eyes as she passed him, not the kitchen staff whose laughter sounded just a bit too cold. He took a seat near the window, alone, tired but determined. He came not as the CEO, but as a customer, and what he'd hear next would change everything. If you love stories like this where CEOs go undercover to expose the truth, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss what happens next. The moment Javier stepped through the doors of Maria's place, his heart sank. It wasn't the lighting or the furniture. Those hadn't changed. The smell still lingered with memories. Sizzling butter, roasted garlic, and the faint sweetness of cornbread. But what had changed was the soul. No greeting, no eye contact. The hostess, a young woman glued to her phone, didn't even lift her head. "Sit wherever," she mumbled like she was doing him a favor. Javier paused for a beat, stunned. This was the restaurant named after his mother, the place where he used to greet every guest at the door with a handshake and a smile, where every new hire had to memorize the mission. Serve food with warmth, leave egos at the door. He quietly walked to a booth in the back, his old booth, where he used to sit during the grand opening 2 decades ago, rolling silverware with his staff. He ran his fingers across the edge of the worn table. Same scratches, same wood, different energy. Then came Shannon, late 20s, tired eyes, but her expression wasn't tired. It was hard, defensive, cold. She strutted to his table with her arms crossed, chewing gum like it owed her money. "What do you want?" she snapped, barely looking at him. "And just so you know, we don't split bills under $30. We don't do substitutions, and no, we don't have oat milk." Javier looked up gently. "Good evening," he said kindly, trying to disarm the tension with warmth. "Could I please have the fried chicken plate? And a sweet tea, if that's okay?" Shannon gave a sarcastic snort. "Oh, sure. Anything else, Your Majesty? Maybe a gold plate and a back rub, too?" Javier offered a weak smile, hiding the sting in his chest. No, ma'am, that'll be all. Thank you. She rolled her eyes dramatically and turned on her heel, muttering loud enough for the nearby table to hear. Cheap orders and broke energy. Bet he leaves me loose change and an inspirational quote. A few teenagers sitting nearby giggled. Javier heard every word. His heart dropped into his stomach. He wanted to say something, to remind her this booth was where he trained the very first staff, that this restaurant used to feed single mothers for free on Sundays, that the chair she leaned on was hand-built by him and his cousin with salvaged wood. But instead, he stayed silent. Because tonight, he wasn't the boss. He was just an old man with a worn hoodie, waiting for his sweet tea, and now trying hard not to choke on his pride. And somewhere, deep down, his mother's picture on the wall seemed to stare back at him with disappointment. Just as Javier was about to rise and walk out quietly, a voice exploded from the kitchen. If you're enjoying this story so far, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. That way, you'll be the first to catch all the shocking twists and reveals coming up. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. It's going to blow your mind. Why'd you fire Luis, man? It was Miguel, the line cook, the same young man Shannon mocked for sharing his tips. The entire dining room turned toward the swinging kitchen doors. You can't just throw people out because they care, Miguel shouted again, his voice cracking. He gave one plate to a homeless mom and her kid last week. You praised him for it. Now he's gone? Because I don't run a soup kitchen, Rick barked, stomping toward the pass-through. His face was blotched red with fury. Luis went soft, giving away free food like some kind of Mother Teresa. I don't need heroes in the kitchen. I need rules. That was it. Javier's body jolted with something that had long been buried. Not anger, but purpose. He slowly stood from his booth, heart pounding like a war drum. He pulled off his old hoodie and cap, revealing his silver-streaked hair and worn but proud face. He walked straight toward the center of the dining room, his eyes locked on Rick like a man returning to reclaim sacred ground. Shannon blinked, confused. Sir? You can't be back here. This area's for staff. Rick turned around, puffed up like a rooster. Hey, you think this is a circus? Sit your butt down or I'll have you thrown. Javier reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out a leather badge holder. With one calm flick, he let it drop open. The logo of Cajun Soul glinted under the light. The words were unmistakable. Javier Morales, founder and CEO gas, filled the room like a wave crashing on concrete. Forks clattered. A server dropped a glass. Shannon went sheet white. Rick took a step back, mouth half open. Wait, what? You're him? Javier didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His tone, heavy, solemn, and heartbreakingly calm, carried the weight of every promise broken inside those walls. 30 years ago, I opened this place with my mother's recipe and a $500 loan. I cleaned tables, burned my hands on fryers, slept in the back room when I couldn't afford rent. He paused, scanning every face in the room. The servers frozen in shame, the cooks staring through tears, the customers now whispering in disbelief. I named this place after her, Maria, because she believed in feeding people with heart, not greed, not manipulation, not humiliation. He turned to Rick now, his stare sharper than any blade. But tonight, I saw my name dragged through grease and gossip. I saw a man fired for kindness. I saw tips stolen, dignity lost, and a culture poisoned. Shannon began to cry. I didn't know. I was just... You did, Javier said quietly, looking her in the eye. And so did he. He nodded at Rick. You forgot what this place stands for. You saw uniforms instead of people, struggling customers as burdens, honest workers as liabilities. The kitchen door creaked open again, and there, standing in the frame, eyes wide and red, was Luis. Mr. Morales, he whispered, trembling. I didn't mean to cause trouble. Javier's face softened finally. Luis, he said, his voice warm. You're hired back, starting now, and your pay's going up. Luis broke down in tears, covering his face as Miguel pulled him into a hug. The staff was stunned into silence. Some couldn't even lift their heads. Javier looked around one last time. I don't care about profits if we lose our soul. If you're only here for a paycheck, go. But if you want to be part of something real, something that feeds more than just hunger, then meet me here tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. sharp. We're starting over. And just like that, he walked out the front door, leaving behind a restaurant that had just tasted the bitter truth and now had one chance to earn redemption. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, a line had already formed outside the doors of Cajun Soul. Some wore wrinkled uniforms, others carried notebooks. One young server clutched her apron with both hands like it was a lifeline. No one spoke much. They just waited. And then, right at 7 a.m. sharp, the door opened. Javier Morales stood there. No badge this time, no CEO speech, just him, wearing a fresh white apron over an old denim shirt, sleeves rolled up, like day one. He smiled. "Come in," he said softly. "Let's rebuild." They filed in, quiet and humble. The same people who had once joked, cursed, or ignored, now filled with a sense of nervous hope and guilt, but most of all, readiness. Javier didn't start with rules. He started with a story. "My mom taught me how to fry chicken before I learned how to drive," he began. "But what she really taught me was this. When someone walks through that door, no matter how rich or poor, they're ours. For 10 minutes or an hour, they're ours to care for. That means we smile, we listen, we serve with soul, because it's not about chicken, it's about respect." Silence hung heavy, then a hand slowly raised. It was Miguel. "Mr. Morales, are we really doing this? Like, for real, starting over?" Javier nodded. "Not just here. Every location, new training, new leadership, and a new rule. Kindness is required." Then he turned to the back, where Rick had once ruled the kitchen like a tyrant. A different man stood there now. Luis, freshly shaved, eyes still red, but standing tall in his new manager's apron. "You earned this," Javier said. "Lead with heart." Luis looked like he might collapse from gratitude. Shannon, still raw from the previous night, stepped forward, tears welling up. "I messed up," she said quietly. "I've been bitter, rude. I treated people like they were beneath me. I forgot what this place stood for." Javier simply opened his arms. "Then start fresh," he said. "If you're willing to change, I'll always make room at the table." She nodded and wiped her face. "Thank you." Weeks passed. Word spread fast. Customers who once stopped coming returned in droves, not just for the food, but for the feeling. Smiles replaced sighs. Tips went up. Even the kitchen sounded different. Laughter mixed with the sound of sizzling oil. Javier visited every location. He met every manager, shook every hand, and when one customer came in short on cash, Shannon offered to cover it, without hesitation. She didn't need a rulebook anymore. She had rediscovered her soul. And in the end, so had Cajun Soul. The CEO came undercover expecting to find lazy staff. Instead, he found a broken culture and chose not to punish it, but heal it. That's what real leadership looks like.